Hello. Okay, so we're up to the 10th plague now. This is the big one. Now, here's the thing: the first 9 plagues, like 3 chapters of the Bible cover them. The 10th plague, like 2.5 chapters covers it. Not going to go into too much detail on this. Uh, and a lot of it is, a lot of this 2.5 chapters is going through the here's how we're going to keep the Passover. And again, not going to go into detail on that, just going to talk about the plague itself mostly. And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring 1 plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. So this is it. Been hardening Pharaoh's heart all along. Gonna stop. This is the big one. Going to give the Egyptians a break for a change here. Speak now in the ear of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. So, this is the, we talked in the Ipuwer papyrus about the people looting, and this is it, at one point they say the people spoiled the Egyptians. At this point it's saying they're borrowing from them. And again, this whole time, some of the Egyptians have been like, come on, Pharaoh, let the guys go. We've seen, Moses says something terrible is going to happen, something terrible happened. We're so tired of this, just let them go. And so they're willing to, okay, we're going to give you stuff. Or, it says borrow here. It's, I don't know, stolen, given, hard to say which. The people are desperate for the Israelites to be gone, so they're willing to give them stuff. I mean, this is almost like a bribe, you could say, maybe. Again, we have one verse telling what exactly happened. And when I say what exactly, I mean very little detail on what happened. And Moses said, and Moses said, Thus saith the Lord, About midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn of the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon the throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. So again, animals, like I said, they died during the murrain. That was what, 5th plague, I believe. The Egyptians bought more, so they had to bring them inside when the hail came. Now some of them are going to die again. And against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move its tongue against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord doth put the difference between the Egyptians and Israel. So you're not going to die yet, because we're going to go into, again, here's how you don't die, and you do the ritual of the Passover. And anyone of the Israelites who said they weren't going to do it, which, we have no record of anyone doing that, but should anyone have said, I don't want to do this, the other plagues didn't hurt me, why should I do this whole thing? They would have died. So the promise of this won't hit any of you is actually more of a conditional promise. You're going to have to go through the ritual of the Passover, or it will. And that's actually explained later. Okay. Skip ahead a little to the beginning of chapter 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the 1st month of the year to you. Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. So we're getting into the Passover ritual here. So this is the beginning of months for you. So, did this happen before the start of the first month or after the start of the first month? It happened before the 10th day because God's saying on the 10th day you got to do this. So, it had to happen before then. Which goes back to the whole spoiling of the Egyptians because there are people wanting to argue when exactly the Passover took place, and they're saying, well, they kept the Passover, then they spoiled the Egyptians, and they left. And no, they were told at least 4 days before the Passover to start spoiling the Egyptians, start borrowing from your neighbors. So, and it goes back to what I've said in an earlier video about verb tenses. Well, it says, they spoiled the Egyptians. Or was it they spoiled the Egyptians or they had spoiled the Egyptians? Two different past verb tenses. The Hebrew language doesn't really distinguish between the two as well as modern English does. So what was the actual intent there? So, and at this point, I'm wondering what the Egyptians are thinking about all this. I mean, obviously, they're giving stuff to the Israelites. We want you out of the land. Here, take our gold and precious jewels. Are they watching them? Okay, Moses just called them all together. They had a discussion, don't quite know what they said, but then they all went home and they set aside a lamb. Did any of the Egyptians think, maybe I should get a lamb and start trying to do what these Israelites are doing? We don't know. I mean, it's very possible. But, the plague hit all of them. Well, yes, because they didn't do everything. Moses told them do all this stuff, and the Israelites did it, and the Egyptians didn't have all the information. Maybe. And again, this is speculation, but I just got to wonder, after 9 plagues and after Moses being right all the time, did some Egyptian think, I'm going to keep an eye on these Israelites and I'm going to try to do what they do? It's a reasonable belief that some of them might have. On the other hand, the Israelites were in the land of Goshen, which was a district of Egypt, separate from it. I don't know how maybe a county, maybe I don't know how we would classify it. So maybe the Egyptians didn't see any of this going on. Maybe they weren't watching as closely. Hard to say. I mean, just the idea that the Egyptians had their own, or not the Egyptians, the Israelites had their own section of Egypt to live in, brings about a lot of questions about the nature of their slavery. I mean, how exactly were they serving the Egyptians but still having their own part of town? Or even part of town's the wrong way to put it. This is a part of the country. So are they on rotation of some kind where they're coming and this group comes and works for us for so many days and then goes back to Goshen and this other group comes? Or we don't know any of how that worked. Again, questions that the Bible raises and never answers. So it talks about kill the lamb, put the blood on the doorposts, then how you cook it, roast it alive. So this is one thing. I know people, they talk about, okay, you're supposed to kill it and roast it whole. So what about the entrails? What about all the stuff in its stomach and all that? And actually heard a lecture by one guy who was from Greece, part of Greece where they normally have lamb roasts on a regular occasion. According to him, I don't know, they would set a lamb aside for a few days and just give it nothing but water to drink, so that way its insides have a chance to clean out. And so whether that's part of the, on the 10th day, set the lamb aside, and then on the 14th day is the Passover, was that a part of it? Was this just, set the lamb aside so that it's not eating anything and its insides have a chance to clean out? That was the suggestion this one guy made. Again, it makes sense, although the Bible doesn't specifically say that's what happened. We skip forward a bunch because there's a lot, I'm not going to go through the whole Passover ritual because that can be found a lot of places. Boy, where did it happen? There we go. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on the throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. So yeah, this poor guy in the dungeon doesn't know what's going on. And we come back to, the Ipuwer papyrus. It had that one spot where it mentioned the children being dashed against the wall and stuff like that. And people saying that was a representation of the 10th plague. Again, the Bible doesn't say. It just says the Lord slew them. The word slain, slew, whatever, it can have violent meaning, or it can just mean they died. Don't know for sure. But, I mean, it could have been supernaturally people were being dashed aside and acting like they were attacked. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, and he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. So, if the Egyptians were trying to imitate the Passover, they failed. They might have set the lamb aside, they might have actually put the blood on their doorpost, but they didn't do the rest of it correctly. Skip back. There was a part earlier, don't know the exact verse, where a stranger shall not eat of the Passover. And I'm bringing that up because if you go into the later books in the law and read about the Passover, it says, if a stranger eats of this, he shall be circumcised. And so what's happening? There's a contradiction there? Not really. I mean, the first Passover, the stranger, quote unquote, would have been the Egyptians. They're being punished. So saying, don't invite the Egyptians over for this because they're being punished. And then in the future, as we redo this, strangers who aren't being punished can keep the Passover, as long as they are circumcised and are following the law and other stuff like that. Okay, also take your flocks and your herds, and ye have said, and be gone, and blessed me also. So, not going to negotiate this time. You can go, take the children, take everyone with you. Bless me also. So, my firstborn son just died. Apparently this is interesting. Pharaoh himself wasn't the firstborn, according to this. So, we don't know. Again, this goes back to what was his actual relation with Moses. In an earlier one, I said he could have been his uncle, could have been his cousin, whatever. Apparently, the Pharaoh, his older brother would have been the Pharaoh, but maybe he died, and now this guy's like the second in line who took. We don't know what happened there. But Pharaoh wasn't the firstborn. So whether or not he had an older brother who died before all this happened or what, we don't know exactly. But he's still alive, so he wasn't the firstborn. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we be all dead men. Well, yeah. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound on their shoulder, bound up in their cloths upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And again, this is where I'm thinking it should be better translated, they had borrowed, because they were told at least 4 days in advance to borrow. And so And so that's pretty much it. They're thrust out basically. We get to okay. They actually travel for about 5 or 6 days before they get to the Dead Sea. It actually lists, they went here and they encamped, and then they went here and they encamped, and so several days passed before they actually got to the Red Sea. Um, and this is one where again people seem to think that the Egyptians died in the Red Sea like within 24 hours of the Passover. And again, read the Bible and know they didn't. Um, Again, that goes into there's a lot in the Bible we don't understand just because we don't have details of it. But if you read the details we have, we can say, this didn't quite happen like we assume it happened, just because time had to pass between these events. So that's it. Just wanted, Passover was coming up. I decided let's talk about the Ten Commandments. This video's like day before, 2 days before Passover, so it might actually be uploaded on Passover. Not sure exactly when because I gotta, you know, test it out, make sure my camera's working because I've had problems with it. Uh, so I sort of rushed a little bit to try to get through all 10 plagues. I thought I'd have more time, but I, you know, had other stuff to do, so I wasn't making videos as often. But I managed to get the 10th one made at least before the Passover. Again, when exactly it will be posted, I'm not sure, but that's it. Have a nice day.